So as we know, there are many different types of deductions, but two of the most common ones that you will run into are what's called deductions for AGI and deductions from AGI. Now within these two types, there are many deductions you can take that falls into each of the two categories. But in this video, we won't be focusing on what exactly are some examples of deductions of each categories, but rather we'll take a broader look at comparing and contrasting the two deductions functionalities itself and how it impacts your taxes. So one similarity deductions for AGI and deductions from AGI share is that they both reduce your taxable income equally. So let's say if you have a 1,000 deduction for AGI, it will reduce your taxable income by the same amount as if you had a 1,000 deduction from AGI. So the amount, the actual monetary numerical benefit you get from a deduction does not differ based on whether if it's a for AGI deduction or from AGI deduction. So that is one enormous similarity to keep in mind. However, deductions for AGI, which are commonly known as above-the-line deductions, is more beneficial than deductions from AGI, which is commonly referred to as itemized deductions. And the reason that it is more beneficial is really for two reasons. The first is that anyone who files taxes can make a deduction for AGI, provided that they, of course, obviously have a qualified deduction that falls under a deduction for AGI, but that's a given. But on the other hand, not everyone who files taxes can make a deduction from AGI, even if they do have a qualified deduction that falls under a deduction from AGI. Only taxpayers who choose to itemize their deduction can claim a deduction from AGI. For those who claim a standard deduction, and we'll talk more about standard versus itemized deduction in a future video, but if you do take a standard deduction, then you can no longer take a deduction from AGI. So that's the first part of it. So anyone can claim a deduction for AGI even if they take the standard deduction, but not everyone can take a deduction from AGI, because those who do take the standard deduction cannot take a deduction from AGI. Now the second reason why a deduction for AGI is more beneficial than a deduction from AGI is that a deduction for AGI reduces your adjusted gross income, whereas a deduction from AGI does not reduce your adjusted gross income. A deduction from AGI reduces your taxable income instead. Now your AGI, adjusted gross income, is a pretty important figure in tax. It's because that number is used to determine many other things, such as what's called your modified adjusted gross income, which, as we will see later, is a very important number in determining your Social Security tax. As for another example, your adjusted gross income is vital and central in determining how much medical expenses you can deduct. So your adjusted gross income is a very important figure when it comes to taxes, whereas a deduction for AGI will reduce your adjusted gross income. A deduction from AGI will not reduce your adjusted gross income. And obviously we want things that reduce our adjusted gross income, right? Just like how we want things that reduce our taxable income, because the less our taxable income is, the less we have to pay the government in taxes. So for these two reasons, although the amounts reduced from taxable income is the same between a deduction for AGI and a deduction from AGI, we can see many benefits in a deduction for AGI as opposed to a deduction from AGI.